The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
And the family has a few impact statements.
All right.
Possibly just one that they would like me to read into the record, which I have already shown the defendant.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
States Exhibit 1 is a video of Gary Farris with his granddaughter, Olivia.
That dress in the house somehow.
She's not you, yes. Why don't you just squirming? Squirming. You just a squirming girl. Aren't you?
She's at that point. She wants to flip
You're
over on
just a
her
squirming
belly.
girl. That's all you is. You're just a squirm girl. You gonna stand up for me? Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
She wasn't talking
Had
about
a rough day.
moms.
Who was the child?
Olivia, his granddaughter, Emily Payne's
All
daughter.
right. Okay.
And that was from May of 2018. And then, Judge, this is just a photo. States Exhibit 2 that we'd like to put into evidence as well.
All right.
And at this time, I'm going to read into the record a statement written by Emily Payne on behalf of the family. Your Honor, since our father was taken from us, our lives have been filled with an unbearable void. Every day feels like a constant reminder of what we've lost. Gary was a father, grandfather, brother, uncle, friend, and colleague to many. We miss his laughter, his warmth, and his presence in our lives. It's a pain that will never go away. Gary was not just our beloved father, but our confidant and our rock. Now we are left to navigate life without his guidance and support. Every milestone, every happy moment is tainted by the thought that he will not be here to share it with us. There will be no more birthday parties, backyard gatherings, holiday celebrations, or other family activities to share together. Those opportunities to say I love you are forever gone. Our family is forever broken from this tragedy. This loss is only made worse by the betrayal of trust we feel for our mother. To know that the person who caused the suffering to our family was someone we relied on the most is a wound that may never heal. Our children are now growing up without their big daddy and grandma. The impact on their young lives is devastating. They ask questions we cannot answer, and we often find ourselves lost for words when they ask why they don't have a grandmother or grandfather. We ask this court to consider the gravity of this crime, the devastating impact it has had on our family, and to ensure that justice is served. No sentence can ever bring our father back, but a just punishment can offer a semblance of closure and prevent another family from experiencing this unimaginable pain. Your Honor, that's...
And there's Chris Farris right there wiping away the tears that are streaming down his face.
The Court TV podcast will return.
We're watching the sentencing hearing for defendant Melody Farris. She murdered her husband, Gary, and then burned his body in the family's backyard. Now she's set to find out whether she will be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole or without it. That is the legal question, with or without parole. That is what His Honor is going to be tasked with deciding today. We were just hearing a statement. It was written from the perspective of the children of Gary Farris, their perspective as victims here and the loss of their father. And it was authored by daughter Emily Farris. We heard that Chris Farris was going to be speaking, but perhaps that has changed because now we're hearing from a defense friend His name is David Thomas. You saw him. He was a defense witness during the trial, a journalist. Let's take a listen now to what he has to say from the perspective of Melody Farris.
No, swear, man.
Clear. You swear to affirm this testimony that you give before this court be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, put your hand down. Can you judge this for record purposes? Can you state your name?
David Thomas.
Okay, and have you prepared a statement to read to the court for purposes of sentencing?
I have.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Your Honor, may I address the court and say a few things to you and the family?
All right.
First, I'd like to address the Farris family. I want each and every one of you to know how sorry I am for the loss of your dad, your brother, and Melody, for your husband, Gary. I understand what it's like to lose both parents. I buried both of mine in the pouring down rain in 29-degree weather on a Christmas Eve not too long ago. So I understand all the questions about death and why. Yours is even more complicated as to who and why. You are all in my prayers and in my thoughts as these years have gone by. No amount of money can ever replace a parent, a spouse, or a brother, and no amount of money is ever worth anybody's life. Second, Melody, I am your friend. And I will stand up for you today because in this 8 months, 6 years ago that I came to know you, I witnessed what a true friend could be to another friend of ours who was fighting for his life, as he still is today. I saw what your heart was made of in spite of your own circumstances and problems, and that you wanted to help, not to hurt, but to help. I saw the kindness you showed myself along with other people around you. I know your story always remained the same and it never changed. And in my heart of hearts, I believe in your innocence. For I would not be here today along with our friend in spirit, Alan, who is fighting this horrible disease called cancer as we speak. Third, Your Honor, this is my friend Melody. Melody Walker Farris, whom I come before you today on her behalf as a friend to ask you for mercy. I ask you for grace. I ask you for leniency upon your decision of her sentencing. Gary's death was a horrible tragedy, and there is no excuse for murder on any level. But to convict someone and sentence them for life is even more of a tragedy in itself, especially if it is the wrong person, and especially if all of the evidence was not able to be presented to the jury as a complete investigation should have been brought forth. There were a lot of holes in this case and a lot of unanswered questions. I don't know who's responsible for Gary's death. I know the jury did the best they could with the information that they had to work with, Your Honor. But there were doubts, and there still are for many of us in this case today. I don't know who will have to live with that burden for the rest of their lives, but in coming to know Melody, I cannot believe she is the one responsible for her husband's death. And
Judge, I'm going to object. He cannot impeach the verdict. That's an improper statement. He can talk about it affects him and the family, but he cannot impeach the verdict.
I'm going to let him go ahead.
If I gave you a roadmap and tore it in half and expected you to reach a decision in this case without all of the information, that would not be fair to anyone, including Gary, if the wrong person was convicted. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you. Anyone got any questions?
Noted.
All right.
Judge, we just have one more. If the court will recall, there was a gentleman that sat behind Ms. Farris during the entirety of the trial. That is Mr. Alan Wilson. Who's suffering from cancer, as your Honor was referring to. He's unable to be here due to the sickness.
Okay.
So he's correct statement if I can read the report.
All right. Go.
I see it.
All right.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Judge, it'll take me just a second because I got to zoom in. So, Mr. Alan Wilson writes, I've been Melody Walker Farris's friend for the past 30 years. I helped to build her and Gary's house at Hampton Hall, and that's where our friendship began. I have watched her children grow up over the years and become adults. Melody has always been an incredible friend to me. Melody always went the extra mile to make sure that I was okay in my life, even at times when things were not good in hers. I appreciate her more than you know, especially 6 years ago when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It took everything she had to help my friend Dave throw a surprise Christmas gathering for me, but she did, even when her world was falling apart. We have done things over the years like dinner, social events, and just plain hanging out, as Melody would give you the shirt off her back. She always loved her children, no matter what. She loved Gary from the beginning and stuck with him over the years, stating and trying to raise their 4 children as a mother should. She was there for Gary when he was sick. She was there for her children when they needed her. And next one. And she was there for all of us. Judge, I believe we just will have some argument as to sentence, but Ms. Farris wanted to address the court whenever it's appropriate.
I'll generally let her go last, so long as she doesn't talk about the facts of the case. So y'all can go ahead and present.
I'm going to reserve that, yes.
All right, go ahead.
Judge, just ask the argument. We've already addressed the murder issue. We agree with that.
Okay, so here's what's going on. Melody Farris wants to address the court. She is going to speak ahead of the court imposing sentence on her case. This is huge. And what the attorneys just decided there is they're going to give their arguments before she speaks. So you will hear her after her attorney makes his arguments. We need to back up and address something else really important here. Chris Farris, because he was expected to give a statement, and our team in the courtroom learned that it was a surprise even to prosecutors that when the time came to call him forward to give his victim impact statement that he declined. And so he has a right either way. He has a right to deliver a statement or every right not to. It is his choice. Prosecutors always give the family the courtesy and the opportunity and allow them to come forward if they so wish. If they don't, then everything proceeds. So I wanted to back up and clarify that because we were all surprised, and we're communicating with our colleagues in the courtroom who are filming this, and they learned that he just chose not to. And we saw he was pretty broken up there in the gallery during many points of this. We also know that there were some other people very close to Gary sitting there as well who are not giving statements but are there to give support. John and Nancy Farris. John and Nancy. John is Gary's brother, and Nancy is his wife. Chris and his wife are there. Of course, we saw Scott. You heard the letter that was read, authored by Emily, from the perspective of all of the Farris children. And then we right away saw the shift to the defense side, where David Thomas, Melody's friend, was really talking more about the trial and his disagreement with the jury's decision than he was talking about Melody and her character as a person.
This is the Court TV podcast.
Farris, do you have a statement?
I do.
All right.
I've written this so that I can get through the words.
Okay.
On July the 5th, 2018, 6 years, 5 months ago today, began the worst nightmare that I could have ever imagined. Not only my world, but my family's world was absolutely destroyed at the hands of one person. I've had 6+ years of being told not to talk. Don't say that. Take legal advice. I could walk out of this courtroom today
For the microphone.
and drop over dead. I want to make sure that my children, my grandchildren, and Gary's family, and to be honest, at this point in time, the entire world who has viewed this. I have waited for years to make this statement to everyone. I want the world to know who did this. I have always heard that the courtroom is the last place you're going to get the truth. And has that ever been proven to be the truth in this case? Not only did I not do this, I know who did. I know Scott killed his father. He took my husband, the father of Chris, Emily, and Amanda. He took Big Daddy for my grandchildren, Ella, Addison, Olivia, Jax, and James. 3 of them who never got to know Gary. Scott, this is unforgivable. Scott has spent an entire life of loving and protecting you, but this I refuse to cover for you. My mother, your mom, begged me to take the blame for this. She said after she talked to you, after Gary died, that she knew you had done it. Her exact words were, "You are his mother. You have to take blame for this." And I told her no, that I couldn't. I still have 3 other children, grandchildren, and this is not a stolen credit card, a check, or a diamond ring that you've pawned, all of which you have done. I saw you coming from that burn pile the morning of July the 5th in your truck. You told me that you were checking on the fire to make sure that it wasn't going to get the woods on fire. You told me it was okay. I asked you a few weeks later why you were at that burn pile in your truck, and you told me that your dad had told you to clean up the extra wood that was by the barn. I told Hayes that I had seen Scott that morning coming from the burn pile. So, Hayes, where is that recording? I want to know. You told me there was multiple recorders. You did, but you sat here in this courtroom and you told this court that you didn't tell anybody about recorders, but you did. Where is that recording in the interview? You, Scott, immediately started saying that there was a gun missing, a gun that nobody knew about. You never mentioned before. I asked you more days than not where your dad was, and this was the first time you ever had that response. There's a gun missing. You should have you did start immediately spinning your story. When you found out that Addison and Cameron were there the night before, you got so angry. Now I know why. When I went to feed the baby goat the morning that...
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this point. It's all about the facts of the case. You emphatically stated your statement needs to not be about the facts of the case.
Right. Well, Ms. Farris, really not supposed to go into the evidence of this phase of the case. And what I typically do is if the defendant wants to go into the facts of the case, I'm going to allow the state to cross-examine or ask questions, which I don't really anticipate you want to do.
I would just ask to close, Judge.
Your statements needs to be constrained to the punishment, and if there's things you want to talk about in relation to that and how I should sentence you, I don't have a problem if you want to continue to profess your innocence, but we're not going to go on for a significant period of time. You resuscitate your view of the case and your opinion as to what the evidence is without your prior testimony and without the state being able to cross-examine it, it's not proper. So I'm going to ask you to restrain your remarks to comply with those directions.
Judge, this needs to be known.
Well,
I'll just ask to respond, Judge.
all right. All right, go ahead.
I went to feed the baby goat the morning of July the 5th before I left for the lake. I saw where you had washed out the barn. I later found that several bottles of house wash were missing after this all happened several weeks ago. Now I know why. The photos of your bathroom spotlessly clean. Now I know why. I know why you demanded me to move the tractor that you so were upset about it being in the place. Now I know why. Scott, you called me on July the 4th and asked me what my plans were for the day. And I told you I was going to the lake with Amanda, and you were so glad that I was going. I thought it odd then. Now I know why. I found copies of my birth certificate, your dad's birth certificate, our marriage license in your truck. Now I know why. Scott, I saw Gary going to that barn the night of July the 3rd, right after you got home. And then Scott is going, and I thought then Scott's going to be in trouble for staying at the lake and playing golf all the time. Never in a million years did I ever think that this nightmare was starting then. I told you, Detective Hayes, that I saw Scott going over there to the barn. Where is that in the recording? A bag. I know exactly where and when I was standing. Scott, you put antifreeze under my kitchen sink to set me up for this. That only you would have known where it was because it was for the Mercedes. When Amanda and I were putting that house back together, you sat in there and watched us like a hawk. Now I know why. You became so angry when the fire investigator came in July, weeks after this nightmare started. Now I know why you were so angry. Scott, you failed your polygraph test. You recorded meetings at the attorney's office and turned them over to the DA's office. We hired Manny to help us. Emily is the one who used her daddy's credit card to pay for that attorney. Scott, you got so angry that your sister Amanda was getting my personal clothes and my personal things to the point that Cherokee County had to be called. That is not the actions of a sane person. Scott's anger issues have all been a huge issue. When he was in kindergarten and elementary school, Chris would...
I'm objecting. At this point, she's dragging Scott through the mud and his character. This is not proper.
All right, Ms. Farris, I'm going to cut you off if you keep just wanting to resuscitate facts that aren't before the court. And Ms. Frankish, I'll give you a chance to respond to the extent that you want to and give you closing statement.
I am the mother that was always there for my children, even though they had done things that were wrong. Chris, who took care of your girls and loved them if they were my own, who came and got them off the street when you were acting an absolute fool because they were scared to death. who drove down to Buckhead and got your children.
Now, I will tell you, okay, so just to kind of give you some direction. The things that are appropriate, you helping take care of your family, raise your family, those kind of things, what you've done throughout your life, and asking the court to exert some sort of mercy on you, things of that nature are appropriate. So you can talk about those kind of things, but let's don't go into the individual facts or things that haven't been previously presented to the court. Okay? All right, go ahead.
I love Ella and Addison more than life itself. And it was their life or mine, it would be mine in a heartbeat. Emily, who helped you move to and from an apartment and a house in 19-degree weather, even though I knew that you were trying to keep it from me. I was always there for you. I came back to you in Thompson Station after your husband was arrested to care for you and Olivia. I am so sorry that your children will never know their Big Daddy. Amanda and Chad, words cannot express my gratitude for everything that you've done for me. Thank you so very much. And I was fortunate enough to get to care for James every day since he was 3 weeks old. He is my pride and joy. Love for that little boy is unbelievable. I spent 18 plus months in the Cherokee County Jail over something that I did not do. The last thing, I thought that was the last thing I could do to Gary, for him, to get justice for him. I can remember thinking, it's okay that I sit here. I just want answers. That's all I want. And I still haven't gotten them. And I don't think that I ever will. And that scares me to death. Amanda was the only one of my children that got up here and told the truth. And I thank her for that every day. Judge Cannon, I had so many questions, so many whys. Why were so many things not their task? Why was the barn never checked? I think that would have given us so many answers. Why did they run out of Blue Star? They were on my property for days. I beg of you to get answers. Judge Cannon, I am begging for justice for Gary, for my children, for my grandchildren, for Gary's family. And I am begging that you throw out this verdict. Be the 13th juror. Help us get justice.
This is unbelievable. This woman essentially called 3 of the 4 children she birthed liars. She thanks only her daughter Amanda for what she says was telling the truth, and she is still trying to point the finger at her son, Scott.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Back to court we go for more of Melody Farris's statement before the judge imposes sentence. Let's go back and listen.
I did not do this. I promise you on my life. The 18 months that I did in Cherokee County was nothing compared to the last month that I spent in there. Now I know that Cherokee County did not do their job in the investigation. They took Scott's story and ran with it. I know that in my heart, body, and soul, who did that. And I'm begging for help. I'm begging you, Judge Cannon. Please do not send me to prison for something I didn't do. I did not do this. If I had done this, I would take this charge gladly. If it would bring Gary back, I would gladly go to prison. I do not want to wait years for an appeal. I've waited 6 years and 5 months for justice already, but here we are. Maybe I should have testified, but I listened to legal counsel. I wanted the truth out there, and this is why I am making this statement. I will talk to any and everyone who can help me and my family. I never wanted my family's life to be played out for the world to see. It is a mother's job to protect her children, and I cannot protect the person who did this. We can't replace Gary. That is unforgivable. I promise you to work hand in hand with the DA's office. But what scares me the most is that because of several individuals, so many others in this county that did not do their job, justice will never be done. For the last 6 years and 5 months, my every thought has been consumed with this. No matter what I do, it never leaves. And until you have lived this, nobody can understand. And I would not wish this on anybody. When I heard of the mother of the boy at the Appalachia school shooting, she called to tell that her own son was going to the school with a gun. My heart broke for her. This is a mother's worst nightmare. Judge Cannon, I beg of you for help. As one parent to another, help me get justice for Gary and my family. A mother, or at least not this mother, does not blame her child unless she knows he did it. Not thinks, knows. And I would never sit here and let the attorneys lay blame to him if I didn't know. You have no idea how heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching this is. John Luke says that I'm the most stoic person he's ever met. My response was, you never know how strong you are until that's your only choice. So before it's said that the only reason I'm telling you this is because I got a guilty verdict, it's not. If it had come back as not guilty, I would have still been begging for justice, for help getting the right person convicted. As soon as I walked out of the courtroom, I promise you I would have done that. Chris, Emily, Amanda, Ella, Addison, Olivia, Jack, and James, I am doing this for you. Gary is gone, and trust me, when I say that he is in a better place, because this has been the worst nightmare. It's been hell on earth. Knowing that your own son did this. And it's only been by the grace of God that I have survived this last 6 years and 5 months. If I could, I would gladly trade places with Gary. Judge Cannon, I am begging you for help. Please do this for Gary and my family. I have missed years with the people that I love dearly. Help me restore my family. Be the person in Cherokee County that it is their task. I do not want years. I do not want to wait years for justice, years that I may not have. I know this is something that you may never have seen before. And I plead with you to roll this verdict out. Help me get justice for the correct person. As bad as it sounds, I want to be there to watch him chained and shackled and brought to justice. I plead with you. This is something that I will never recover from. I don't know that my family will ever recover from. Please help me. I'm begging you to restore my faith in the judicial system. I'm begging you, not for me, but for Gary and my children and my grandchildren.
This was unbelievable. Quite frankly, unbelievable what we just witnessed. A defendant at her sentencing with an opportunity to ask the court for mercy, to tell the court what kind of a person they are, to make sure the court has a big picture of what the sentence would mean to them and what consideration they believe they ought to have. And instead, she disregards the evidence and blames everybody else for her crimes. Blamed her son Scott, namely, blamed other members of the family, called her other children liars with the exception of her daughter Amanda. She blamed the investigators who she said got it wrong. The court system said she has no faith in the court system. The jury got it wrong. So everybody got it wrong. Everybody got it wrong but her, but Melody Farris. You do the crime, you do the time. There was no remorse, there was no apology, there was only finger pointing at her son. And you saw other members of the family consoling him. Hopefully you saw the split screen. Scott's aunt, Nancy, who is the wife to Gary's brother, John, was comforting him as his mother was delivering that speech.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
All right, as we've indicated, jury have returned a verdict of guilty to all counts. Count 1, the malice murder, being the primary charge. Count 2 would be vacated as a matter of law based upon the conviction in count 1. Count 3, aggravated assault, would merge into the malice murder. I don't, without going into a lot of detail or my thoughts on it, jury's made a determination that Ms. Farris was responsible for her husband's death, and she was found guilty of all charges. I don't have much latitude in sentencing. The legislature has spoken, and the penalty for murder is life. The only determination I have is whether I would be with parole or without parole. I don't believe this is a case that justifies a life without parole sentence, so I'm going to sentence to life with parole, or life with the possibility of parole. I don't have any control over parole. That's up to the parole board. Under the current guidelines and sentencing structure with them, a life sentence is a minimum 30 years before you would be considered for parole at this point. I recognize that that is likely a life sentence for you, but you'll have the hope and possibility of parole. As to count 4, which has a maximum of 10 years, I'm not, as I said, I wasn't going to sentence life without parole. However, I do feel like there's some additional consideration that needs to be taken as to count 4, the concealing the death of another. Presumably, the point of that was, so you were found guilty of discarding and burning the body of Gary Wayne Farris, hindering discovery of whether the person was unlawfully killed. That definitely hindered the investigation and shows additional level of criminal intent. I'm going to sentence to 5 years consecutive on the life sentence as to count 4, concealing the death of another. The false statements, that being the lying to law enforcement about the relationship with Mr. Barton. I believe if law enforcement didn't know about it at the time, they knew about it shortly thereafter. It was well known. Didn't take a lot of effort to make that determination. I don't really find that that's anything additional that needs additional punishment. So I'll run the 5 years concurrent as to count 5. So that will be a life plus 5 with the possibility of parole. And that'll be the sentence.
Count 4, Judge. Count 5 would be concurrent with count 4.
Count 5 would be concurrent with count 4 and the other counts. She'd be eligible for the credit for the time that she's served in the Cherokee County Jail, subject to the jailer's affidavit from the sheriff's office. To the extent that that gives her credit for her sentence, she would receive that. With it being a life sentence and her being in control of Department of Corrections, are there anything that you want me to put as a condition of her sentence?
No contact with family, Judge.
All right.
And not profiting from her conviction.
I will provision that she may not have direct communication with, she may have some of the family that wants to reach out to her. So what I would say is she's not to have any contact with family members. I don't know who they would even notify other than the prison. So any members of the family that want to have contact with you may contact you. They'll need to reach out to the warden's office first and let them know that they want to allow you to have contact with them, so you can call out to whoever has given approval to the warden. As far as the other provision, I'm not going to make any condition as to that. That will be something that would be left to a civil court if there is a lawsuit down the road and judgment, et cetera. So, all right, that being said, court. Yes. All right. Execute the non-pros on the other indictment based upon the conviction on this case.
Will you read that? Make sure you're good. Yes.
All right, Melody Farris goes down guns blazing, saying her son Scott is responsible. He sat in the courtroom along with his other brother Chris, and the family listening. This is something else. This is a family that was ripped apart by the death of Gary Farris, and that Ferris wheel, as it was described during the testimony, continues to roll. And we saw the mother lashing out. Extraordinary that a mother at this point in the scenario, let's say, all right, let's assume she's guilty. It's extraordinary that she would take it to this level during sentencing. We see guilty people all the time on court TV, and they don't say a word at sentencing, or if they do, they give fake apologies. No, this was lashing out at the killer. But the killer is her own son. Does it make you pause? Does it make you think? Because we watched this trial, all of us, and it was not a slam dunk. Did they get the right guy or gal? Was it Scott? Was it Melody? The jury says it was beyond a reasonable doubt. It was Melody. She's maintaining it was her son, Scott.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.